Hey there, fellow creators, Ben here from Cinder Studios, and today I'm back with 5 more tips for beginners. Stick around. So just like I predicted after the last time I did one of these, I came up with another 5, so here they are. First tip, do not use printer paper to draw on. It is way too smooth. There is no tooth in it. The brightness of the paper is also really kind of intimidating. Even some basic text paper is going to be slightly off-white and be have a little bit of a texture to it. Makes it just a much better experience to draw on. And generally speaking, your drawings tend to last a little bit longer on a sheet of paper made for artists versus stuff made for your home printer. Now, a lot of people are probably going to say, well, that's all I can get is home printer paper. Actually, I'm pretty sure even a store like Walmart has some basic sketch pads you can get, so you can find them. They are out there, and they're not really that expensive. Might even be able to find one at the dollar store. Tip number 2 is knowing your 4 joints of drawing. Now, I've got a really old video about this on the channel already, but it probably needs updated. A lot of people don't realize that when you're drawing, you have a whole range of motion with 4 different joints going up your arm. You have your fingers for those short movements, usually quick sketches and things like that. You have your wrist, which gives you a little more of an arc. There's your elbow, which gives you a bigger arc. But if you need to make big straight lines, a lot of times people want to just keep kind of moving their hand, and that's why they get the wiggle for a straight line. But the idea is to keep your fingers and your wrist still and move your whole arm to get a nice big expressive straight line. Whether that's a straight line in your sketchbook this big or a straight line across the whole page like this or canvas, knowing these 4 joints and knowing exactly when to manipulate them can really be one of the most valuable things in learning to draw and paint. And also in knowing that you have the 4 joints to work with, you can naturally manipulate the arc that your hand creates. Okay, for tips 3 and 4, we're jumping over to painting. Tip 3 is to make yourself some color charts. Something like one of these. I make these when I get a new color and then mix it with a variety, sometimes all of my other colors, sometimes just a handful to kind of give myself an idea. This way, before I waste any paint being like, oh, what does this do, what does this do, I can do a small swatches of color and know exactly what all of them can do and what those mixes look like, so I can go into my next painting project a little bit better educated to what that color can do for me. And of course, things like color wheels, color map charts like the grid ones I have back here. You can buy those, sure, but making them yourself is 1, way more fun, and 2, definitely gives you a better gauge on what your colors can do and what you can do with them. Tip number 4, avoid using stay wet palettes, at least in sort of the beginning stages. Stay wet palettes are really good for someone who's maybe doing a longer term painting session, or you really kind of built up your color mixing knowledge, and it's really just a convenience. Personally, I don't use them at all. I will end up covering my palette, but that only lasts a couple of days. When you use the stay wet palettes all the time, and I think I've talked about this in this channel in the past, what it doesn't teach you is color mixing. It's like, well, then I have to remix the color from scratch again. It's like, yes, you do. So you can learn to do that every single time. In doing so, if you get really good at it, you can pretty much match by eye a color. I'm to the point now where I can look at a color and know exactly what makes it up within probably about a 5% margin of error. One thing that's I would say is a good replacement for, rather than always using the stay wet palette, is to let your last palette dry. This way you know what colors you were using, and you kind of can visualize the path on what all of those color mixes looked like. Of course, depending on how you ended up mixing and things like that can vary that a little bit. But this I'll leave to the side until I grab a new palette for my next painting session. That way I'll know sort of my thought process prior, especially since I usually can only paint maybe once or twice a week. So by the time I get back to painting, I can go, okay, that's what I was thinking. Let's just pick up from there. And the final tip is to try absolutely everything. Whatever you can get your hands on, whether that be through gifts, through things you can try that other people have, or just things you buy yourself. Get your hands on as much stuff as you can, or at least try it. You don't necessarily have to have it, just try it out. Mostly because it teaches you so much about everything. I find that when I switch to a new medium for a while, or just a different medium for a while, I should say, I start to learn more about what I could do with my acrylics. So I'll start using watercolors for a little while, like more exclusively. And as I'm working with it, I'm like, oh, I got to try this with my acrylics. Like, I bet this technique would translate, and vice versa. And I can pull this techniques from here and techniques from here. You start to really gain a knowledge of what is possible with the art supplies you already use. But if you're stuck in just using the same thing over and over and over again, you don't really learn that. So get your hands on as much as you can and try absolutely everything. So those are my 5 more tips for beginners, and I'm sure this won't be the end of this series. There will be more in the future, I'm sure. But if you guys think of anything or anything that you've come across as a good tip, leave that in comments below. As always, hit that like button. Check me out in social links in the description box below, including where you can buy my first art book, Worlds Unknown. Copies are still available for that at redfishbowl.com. Thanks guys for watching. Keep on creating, and I will see you guys next time.